Hello and welcome. I'm Sue Riekels, and this is my colleague and friend, Connie Wilder. We're thrilled to be here with you today, and our topic is when to know if it's time to walk away from a relationship. Connie, I want to just reach back to you and say, in your years of experience, are there relationships that you were confident in walking away from? Are there ones that you wish you might not have walked away from? And are there any things that you've gleaned from that perhaps that help you now maybe navigate it a little differently?
Wow. And so thank you, Sue, for the introduction. And thank you for the question that goes zing right into my heart. And yes, one situation that comes to mind is the relationship that I had prior to Eric. And I walked away from that, and I'm so glad I did. And there were many, many situations, that many factors, many considerations that went into that decision. And I do have it in a journal that I was no longer cheering for that relationship, which I still to this day love to read that because it's easy to watching all the movies. It's easy to romanticize a relationship, and then it's one thing to see your own writing, your own handwriting in a journal of what I've captured. And so that I love that I was no longer cheering for that relationship, which made me that much more open to the next relationship. And that next relationship is who I married. And I love that. Mhm.
Thank you, Connie, for sharing that. Can I ask you, and trust me, any question I ask that for both of us that we don't feel comfortable in answering in this state, please say no. Can you walk us through maybe some considerations you took into mind before you walked away?
Mm. No, just kidding. Some considerations. That consideration, that relationship was a long distance relationship. So in some ways, it was so much easier just to cut, so to speak, the apron strings. And I did cut them because we have never seen each other since, which is okay in my book.
Yep.
And so I may not have all those considerations down, yet I feel like that decision is complex, and and that situation was complex as well. And there were considerations. I would say most of those were emotional considerations and emotional, psychological, financial, those social situations that I guess I went through those and considered them, yet I knew it was the right decision. And and that part I'm so grateful for. How about yourself, Sue?
Well, I want to just say one thing that I didn't start out with, which I'm sorry about that. And that is this discussion is not surrounding abuse, verbal or physical. Those considerations really fall into, I believe, another group, and they don't need consideration. They need instant action, and that is your own survival and taking care of yourself. And so I want to start by saying I should have started back, but I'm going to say it now. Under no circumstances, and it's still complex. I understand the financial and other things, especially if there's a marriage involved. However, nobody deserves to be treated that way. I'll just say that flatly. And then with relationships, what I've learned to be true, and I didn't learn this until I went back to school for psychology, is how to navigate hard conversations, how to navigate relationships. And so this area gets a little deeper for me, knowing what I know now. And my go to used to be duck and run. And we call it a dorsal response, and that's more that frozen nervous system response. I'm not going to lean in and have this hard conversation. I'm just moving. I'm gone. And that was comfortable to me because I grew up without much conflict in my home life. I never had the modeling of resolving conflict, resolving hard situations, and actually having a conversation about it. So it was easy for me to quit my job and go take another one. It was easy for me to necessarily maybe let a friendship go and just like slide off. What I'm noticing now is I will lean in and have some of those harder conversations, or at least I try to, and see how the person meets me. If it's a misunderstanding, thank goodness we talked about it. If it's they really see it differently, and maybe our morals are really different than what we thought, it might be time to go separate ways, especially if it's a friendship. Like, we're just at different points now. Again, I think back to the people come in your life for a time, for a reason, for a season, and maybe for a lifetime. Holding all of those, possibilities. What are your thoughts, Connie, when you think about the nervous system getting involved, or anything more that you've noticed that might be helpful considerations, again, to take in mind of, is this time to quit, to move on, or to close this relationship down, with really being intentional about it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sue. And it's another area where I feel like I have a lot to learn as a human being, as a woman. And so some of the considerations that I've done in the past, like sometimes I want to go through that goal analysis, the pros and the cons, weight those. Those have been very helpful for me in making other decisions, not about walking away from something, but about walking to something. Those considerations have been very helpful to me in the past. And I'm thinking about, just on the spot, I'm thinking about my own growing up. And I think I grew up in an environment where people were scrappy. And I think that's what I've learned. And I had one friend's father describe me in that capacity as a scrappy woman. And I was like, he's right. I am scrappy. And I like that about myself.
Yeah.
And yet there's so many things about having and navigating those difficult conversations, which I think I've been someone in my family who wants to stand there and do that. And people aren't always ready for it.
Yeah.
Um, Anyways, how about you? How about yourself?
No, and that's a good point. We can't control the other person. And when you start to lean in, people don't always trust it, especially if it's new behavior. I will speak to that in my own experience. Is Sue gonna duck and run again? Like, there were people, especially the closest ones, my family. Is she really saying this nice thing versus reacting and responding and being more scrappy? And I would say that would probably be my go-to. In addition, it was either scrappy or I would go away. Versus, I'm attempting, still work in progress, being resourced so that I can say exactly what I need to say, be clear about it before I make a decision of leaving. And I think that the piece that I hold is, we are always in control of us. We're in control of this decision of staying, and we're in control of this decision of leaving. And by leaning towards the person we're having the issue with, is going to give us more information that I think either reinforces staying or moving on. And what my hope is, and I've experienced this, is leaving should feel just as good, if it's the right decision, as staying. And it's not exiting and running away. What I know to be true as a therapist is, it follows you. If we don't deal with it here, the next marriage is going to have it. The next friendship it's going to happen to. It follows us because we're the common denominator. And until we fix this part, or not fix, notice and work on this part that might duck and run and not lean in and trust ourselves in the decision of staying or leaving, that will continue to follow us. So I just invite all of us together to continue to work on this. It's something I don't believe we ever arrive at. And it takes intentional work.
Yeah, it does. It does. These decisions are complex. And I've watched a lot of people, a lot of friends leave their marriages. And as I'm thinking about that in this moment, I don't know if they've done the duck and run, or if they've truly thought about it and truly navigated these tough conversations. And yet I want to support them. And how do I support them without judgment is another topic for another show, another podcast, really. And so awareness, you mentioned that concept of awareness, which is a powerful driver in our emotional intelligence. It's a powerful driver, that awareness, that self-awareness. And I've even used this in my clients and work with my clients that like if you want to flip me off because I've like enough on the self-awareness, Connie. Like that's me being kind of rude to myself around that. Like
Mhm.
wow, like it doesn't have to get to that piece. And am I well resourced? I'm not someone who swears. So is that out of my window of tolerance? And is it outside of my being well resourced, even swearing around that? Because I'm not someone who swears. So it's good to know it's good to know our limits and our boundaries.
Absolutely. And I think you nailed it on it, that awareness for ourselves, and also not diminishing, trusting that the people you're working with can tell you, Connie, that was a little too much, and not putting ourselves down, right? Like there is that piece, I think, as women as well, we tend to go there more often of putting ourselves down or giving open or space for that put down versus, I don't know, maybe, excuse me, man, you can correct me if I'm wrong. A man who would say, like, go ahead and flip me off if I said too much. And yet, this is our programming, right? Too. And so I think the same thing is maybe we stay too long.
Wow.
Notice that as well for some people. Notice if there's trust that has been broken. Do you want to work on that? Or are you saying no? Not a right or wrong answer. Um, I will share openly, I was married previously, and it was a very hard decision, lots to consider, and not a healthy relationship. And so, should I have left earlier? Probably. And it wasn't so blatant that I felt it was that clear. So, there's gray areas in which we can also sit, no judgment. I am holding my younger self with no judgment as well, that I did all that I knew how to with the skills that I had, and I didn't have the skills. I learned a lot through that, and I'm taking that forward. I have done some work and continue to do my own work. And that is the piece that I think we bring into the next relationships. And it can be an expansive experience versus a holding us back experience. So notice what you're getting out of leaving versus staying. Notice how it's landing for you. Does it feel good that you've done the steps that you need to get to where you want to go? I think there's just so many different things to think about.
Yeah.
Not sure that I've answered any questions that people might have. And
Yeah.
I don't think there is a right answer or a wrong answer.
You know what? I've learned so much from you, Sue, and I want people to know that I just learned for the first time that you were married before. I didn't know that about you. And how can I be a woman that supports you in that? Like what do I need to do? And just to hold space for that is where I'm going to land right now. I want to just hold space for that. And I didn't know that about you, and yeah, that's so cool. I mean, it's I'm sure you learned so much and navigated so much to get where you are today.
And it's not something I share often. And as a therapist, we usually hold our own stuff because in therapy, it's not about us, it's about who we're working with. And I know as a coach now, more so, and as an educator, I am sharing bits and pieces of my story for helpful reasons, not because I need something, but because I think the story itself can support others' growth. And so you're right. I don't talk about it as much, and I'm starting to talk about it more. Um, and I think that is another thing: women supporting women, men supporting men, all of us supporting each other, is holding these stories without judgment, without knowing the story, and just being present and attuned to our friend in front of us who has made whatever decision they have made in that support.
So, may I ask you, as a therapist, what is your advice around building that concept of holding space? Like, how do we learn how to hold space if it has not been modeled well for us?
Great question. I think we have to work on our own nervous system. And here's why: we're constantly picking up on people around us. And if our nervous system is activated and we're leaning in towards somebody who's activated, I don't believe we can hold well the space between us when we're both activated. Just my opinion. Whereas if I come to you and I'm grounded and I'm resourced, I know that I'm not going through say it's a divorce. I'm not going through a divorce, and I can just hold you and whatever you have. That feels really different than if I come as a wounded divorcee holding your wounded divorce in my hands with you. Then I'm looking for this mutual support versus it's nothing about me. I'm holding you and your situation with these gentle hands, and it's all about you right this moment. That's my opinion of being attuned and being present to someone else's pain and experience. How
Thank
about
you so
yourself?
much.
Yeah.
Well, I agree. I agree that holding it literally, holding that situation, holding what someone has given you, and not everyone has earned the right to hear one's story as well. And so being coming alongside them and holding that space, literally holding the situation for them is what I've done as a good listener, as a coach, what I've done for years. And so I love your answer to that question, Sue. It's very spot on. And our topic today has been how do we support other women when it is time to walk away? Well, when it is time to walk away, how do we know that? And our those decisions are complex, which we've definitely noted, and that one ought to feel a certain way when you make that decision. And so, is there anything else you want to add, Sue?
Yeah, just what you said, I totally agree with, and that you control your own outcome. You control whether you stay or you leave. Be confident in that decision, whatever decision you